Manuel, it's great to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me here. It's awesome.
Good, good. No, it's a pleasure to have you on. And yeah, I just kind of thought I'd start by introducing you and asking how you kind of got into what you do because I see you're a psychiatrist, coach, speaker.
So this is the point in the interview where I take off my psychiatry hat and I put on my
Yeah,
coach hat, right?
yeah,
So as a psychiatrist, we don't really self-disclose. We don't talk about ourselves with our patient. It's all focused on the patient. But as a coach, it's much more relevant and reasonable to be talking about our experiences and what we've been doing. So I've been a psychiatrist for well over 20 years, and I've had a private practice where I've been very busy and very successful. And about 12 years ago, I got super burnt out. I was emotionally exhausted. I was cynical and snarky. I didn't feel effective at my job anymore. And it was literally one day in September 2008 that I was sitting in a dark room and I was just beside myself, and I was thinking something has got to change. I was at the end of my rope, and across from me was a picture of my twin sister Magdalena, who in that picture she's smiling and she's literally glowing. And what you can't tell looking at the picture is that she's wearing a wig because she was going through radiation at that time. And the month before, in August 2008, Magdalena had passed away after 3 years of battling with brain cancer. And what was striking to me, what was a very sharp contrast, was her last 3 years, she lived with such grace and humility and love for life and for people. And here I was very healthy and everything going for me. And I was absolutely miserable. And it was in that moment that I just committed. I drew a line in the sand. There was a moment of truth. And I said, like, no matter what going forward, I've got to enjoy the ride. So for the last 12 years, it's been just a journey for me to transform my attitude, and my life from the outside still looks very much the same. I still work a lot of hours, still, 12 hours a day of talking to patients now instead of seeing patients. And then a couple of hours of calling in prescriptions and returning phone calls. But I've also built in a lot of things that help to keep me fresh. And my latest has been, doing coaching with entrepreneurs to really help them develop their mental fitness, and also talking more about a community of with people, elevating the discussion around mental health, burnout, addiction, trauma, so we can elevate the conversation and decrease the stigma, because people don't have to be alone with these afflictions and the suffering that's related to them, like I was so many years ago.
yeah. No, definitely. And I think you had like that experience happen with your sister, and that was kind of like a turning point of realization, for yourself because you know, that happened, and then you just think like, I've got all this happening, but I'm not okay. And I think like that happens to like a lot of people, doesn't it? I think we get so caught up in everything happening around us in society and stresses that people almost, just kind of react in that reaction mode and not satisfied, like kind of. And I think it's great now that you're helping people, to develop and become better and to realize this probably.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what I say is that stress is part of life. The On a planet with gravity, there's going to be boo boos, and we're going to fall down. We're going to get hurt, and there's a researcher from Stanford, David Zaplowski, and he studies stress in humans, and then he goes to Africa and he studies stress in baboons. But when they ask him, what is stress, he says, for hundreds of thousands of years, stress was when something was going to kill you. Like there was like a moment of stress, and then your body would have a reaction to fight or flight, and it would get ready to either survive with an injury or to be dead. And that was what stress was. It was a momentary thing. And for us humans, we can imagine all the bad things that can happen to us. We imagine, we have taxes due, we have rent due, we have COVID. There's all these things in our head constantly. So now we have this chronic level of low grade to high grade demands on our bodies, and we are always um, on high alert, like we're about to die, like there's a line right next to us. And having the ability to overcome that and to change that and to modify that helps us a tremendous amount in terms of our own mental well-being and in our physical health.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And I think they're really good points. And I think like as well, would you say, during COVID, there's been like an increase in that, like you said, because people, might be unemployed or they might have
Hmm.
payments checks and this kind of thing. Would you say you've kind of noticed in people that kind of elevate during this time?
Yes, I mean they're very real fears, right? So there's
Mm,
the reality is that there's a lot of suffering in the world, and something like COVID brings in a tremendous amount of
mm.
mental anguish. Um, and then people get mad at their neighbors who are not wearing a mask, or because their neighbor is wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Humans being humans, and we constantly are thinking about these things that we don't have any control over, and making ourselves very miserable in the meantime. And when I started my coaching company, it was all about, was 3 years ago. I just noticed everybody focusing on things they couldn't do anything about. And it was, let's focus on who you are, and let's focus on your wishes, your aspirations, and who you're becoming. That's your next act. Who are you becoming? Who do you want to be? And then your next act is, what are the actions you're actually doing right now to help you to get there? And let's
Mm.
let go of all the things we don't have control over. Even though, the reality is that some of that stuff really sucks. It's really very painful and it's very real.
Yeah. No, no, exactly. And I think, like you said, people kind of focus on, the things that they can't control. And I think, like, people, we naturally kind of want certainty, don't we? We like to know how it's going to pan out tomorrow. We like to kind of know that. And I think, like you said, people, they get so caught up in looking at the things they can't control, like, like, say, the news, COVID, lots of things. And that causes this anxiety. And you said, like, by focusing on having like a plan almost, focusing on the things that you can control, and where is it that you kind of want to be going.
Right. Right. Taking the focus off of other people and what they're saying and how they're responsible for your upset feelings and thoughts, and
Mm,
really, what are you doing today?
yeah. Like as well, like where do you think is a good starting point if people are trying, to try and get grounded, with their experience and
No, great question. And I'll tell you what I did, and then we can maybe go back and look at some
yeah,
of
of course.
the foundational, concepts around that. So when I was burnt out and I decided I'm going to start to enjoy the ride no matter what, there were a couple of things that I did immediately. So the first thing that I did was I cut out negativity that I was exposing myself to. Our brain is primed by the environment that we put it in, and we're very sensitive to that, and we don't really recognize it. So something like the news media, and I don't think that the news media by and large is an evil entity, but it's not there to soothe you or to teach you. It's there to like get your attention and to keep it focused on it, right? Um, but taking my eyes off of that, I stopped listening to, even like in the morning, I used to like listen to the sports radio, but they stopped talking about human excellence and the stories of overcoming obstacles. They were talking about the dramas and the bickerings and the scandals. I stopped listening to that stuff. And instead I started listening to things like this, like, podcasts of positivity, podcasts of human ambition and overcoming of obstacles, and just things that inspired me. Um, I forced myself to stop focusing on negativity. So there were lots of pressures and stressors that I had. How many hours I was working, how much I owed, in taxes and that, the tax bill was due, how much, so all the negative stuff that I would just wallow in, you can't really stop those thoughts, right? Your mind has those thoughts, but you don't have to put that much attention to them. I literally um, put up blinders to them so that I can focus on the future and what I wanted. I focused on starting an exercise program. So I'm a physician and I'm supposed to be living a healthy, but I wasn't working out. I was eating terrible. And I focused on just a couple of different things, moving more. And I built that out into a really solid exercise program. But initially it was just a little bit of movement every single day, like literally 2 minutes a day, couple of push-ups, couple of sit-ups, repeated every day. And then it turned into a much more, for 12 years now, I've been exercising regularly. I started to eat better. I focused on one meal, like don't change everything. It was like breakfast. I focused on having a better breakfast. And then I built that out over time to a much more solid nutritional plan. Not perfect by any stretch, but better. Um, Sleep, regular sleep. Like I got that very dialed in and structured. I need my sleep. It's one of the best things that you can do for your brain. And then a meditation practice that I've been working on building in for years now. So sleeping more, eat better, move more, cut out negativity, and keep the focus on the future that you want. Those were the things that I initially built out for myself.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that you did that, and you was able to, to have that kind of that self awareness and kind of draw a line in the sand and say, this isn't serving me. This is kind of, how I want to live now, and putting them in those steps. And I think it's key what you mentioned as well. I think like, there's small steps that, I think I sometimes set loads of targets I need to do, and it's like I've kind of came to realize you can't, you kind of have to break them down a little bit to then be able to implement it. And I think that's key in what you said as well, just to take those small steps and then they lead up to become bigger steps over time. And getting the right sleep, in your sleep patterns and regularity, and the content that you kind of consume, because I think like social media as well, I won't go too much into it, but it has there's pros and cons of it, and I think it's that kind of balance, isn't it, with that side of things. But
Yeah.
the news and the media, kind of be mindful of what you're looking at, because that's ultimately going to affect probably how you feel, especially if you listen to certain things first thing in the morning as well, probably.
Absolutely true. Yep.
And as well, like, have did you always kind of think that you would go into this kind of field, like, before you was doing this? Did you ever think that you'd be doing this?
Couldn't have imagined that I'd be doing the things that I'm doing today. Just so to look like way back, um, I didn't really think I would become a psychiatrist.
Mm.
I was when I was young, I was good at math and science. So people said you should become a doctor. So I said, okay, I'll be a doctor. So you study hard in here it's high school and then
Mm.
college and then medical school. You just learn how to work hard to get good grades so that you can get to the next level. But it wasn't very intentional. I
Yeah.
didn't really look at other things that I might have liked to do. Would I have liked to have done business or accounting or something else? It was just sort of the next step on this goal to be what people said would be a good career.
Mm.
And I'm very happy with it in the long run. When I went into psychiatry in medicine, it was the last thing on my list that I would have picked. But
Mm.
what happened was that there were two pieces. Um, I thought that I liked all parts of medicine, so I was thinking of becoming a family doctor. But when I was in my family practice rotation, so we spent 6 weeks in a rotation just studying, OBGYN or surgery or family practice.
Mm.
Everybody would come in and say, I've got, headaches and I'm all stressed out. And then they'd say, I have a rash and I'm all stressed out. I have asthma and I'm all stressed out. Everybody came in with something and they were all stressed out. So I was thinking someone should do something about that. That would be a problem to help people with. And then the other thing was that I discovered after my work was done, we would spend time in the hospital working with patients. And after I was done studying, I would go back to the patients that I was treating, and I would just hang out with them, the ones that didn't have family or visitors, and I would just have them tell me about their lives. And I found that I just loved listening to people tell me stories about their lives and growing up and what things were like for them. Um, so as a result of those experiences, when it was time to pick my specialty, I was hesitating, but I said, you know what I really liked was psychiatry. I'm gonna commit to psychiatry. So that's what I did. And when I got into coaching, I never thought I would do coaching, but it was sort of the same thing. I was really very much led to it, and I had to overcome my own mental obstacles. I'm a psychiatrist and a professional now. I'm going to do coaching as well, but it's really much more about not just helping people get back to functioning, people who are sick, but people who are doing okay do even better.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it's like really good that you're following something that you enjoy and that you love, and you're providing value to other people by helping them. And like you said about like stress, and do you like would you say that a lot of people's stress like has their mental health has like pretty big impact on their physical health, and it's almost like some people they're not aware of that. Like you said, they might have asthma or chest pains or XYZ, and then they're on prescription drugs or whatever for however long. Um, where like because you mentioned that people like yourself, you got burnt out, through working
Yeah.
um, and things like that. Where do you think that that kind of change needs to take place? To people, for people to get more mindful. Do you think like you know before so that they don't kind of reach that point of burnout, if that makes sense?
So I think that there's a couple of things for us to be aware of as individuals, and it's part of why I like talking about this is to
Mm,
raise awareness for individuals and for people in business and entrepreneurs and leaders. Um, a couple of factors that lead to burnout is number one, high work demands, um, and high work demands where you don't feel you have much control, and high work demands, low control, and you don't think that there's much of a purpose behind what you're doing. Um, and you don't think that you're being rewarded or valued. And then if there's a sense of injustice or unfairness in what you're doing, so all of these things when they get lined up can all lead to this syndrome of burnout. And burnout is the three components to burnout is emotional exhaustion, um, a cynical attitude that you develop. You just get very, very cynical towards the world, and then you no longer feel effective at work. And whether you are on the continuum, so the continuum, stressed out, burnt out, you can start to numb out with unhealthy things, drinking and partying and drugs and, too much Netflix or whatever, too much food. Um, or depression, right? So on this continuum, wherever you are, all of these factors can be difficult for you. And then what we can look for helping people with burnout, there's a number of things that I talk about. So for example, one thing is three uh pieces that in a job lead to more job satisfaction. So if you look at lists of what people say make them happy at work, we all think that money, like what are you getting paid, is going to be like a high thing on the top 10 list. And it really comes in like less than five. It's like number seven, number eight, number six on various scales that people do. But the top three things that are talked about, number one is autonomy, a sense that you have some ability to impact your work and what you're doing. Another thing is a sense of mastery, a sense that you're getting better and better, and that you're growing with the work that you're doing. And then the third one is purpose. Um, and if we look at how to add that in a way that's achievable, Marcus Buckingham, who's a social psychologist, I believe, he talks about the 10% rule. He says if 10% of your workday you're doing something that you really, really like intentionally, and you're looking forward to it, and you're really kind of highlighting that in your day, it's not just kind of incidental. Um, that 10%, so whatever that is, an hour, 45 minutes, can offset a lot of things. And that 10% of something that you enjoy is likely to be something that you feel like there's a good purpose behind it. There's autonomy, you like doing it and you can't wait to do it. Um, and there's mastery. It's usually something that you're getting better and better at. So that's a good little shortcut to be finding ways to offset. Now, stress is always going to be part of the equation, and that's where that eat, sleep, move, meditate, kind of thing can help to offset some of that.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think it's really, like really important, like what you said, and I've definitely seen, I've definitely worked in hotels and places, and I'm pretty, aware as a person, and I've seen it in, like, chefs especially. You probably have yourself, and
Yeah.
so many high demands. It's crazy, and we went through. I think we went through like six head chefs in like 3 months,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
and two or three managers, and staff were in and out. And like you said, it was all down to these things like you just described then. The expectations, and people not feeling valued in the place, and all of these things. And it's like you said, it's so important to have that purpose, to know that you have a purpose, and you belong in what you're doing, and
Yeah. Yeah.
to see that growth in yourself in that position, um, was, I think, like a lot of jobs. Well, I mean, I'm not going to name drop any jobs or corporations, but like in some corporations and businesses, people are just spinning their wheels, aren't they?
Yep.
Probably, and they're not.
Yep.
Then they don't feel like they've got a purpose. They
Yeah.
don't feel like they're growing, and they probably want to be doing. They're probably looking at someone else who's above them, and they're not
Yeah.
really feel like
Yeah.
they're getting there.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And you look at corporations or businesses, and there's lots of ways to think about how to make things better. Um, Again, we can wait for a leader to show up who makes everything better, right? Someone else is going to solve the problem. And sometimes that's how it goes. But, as individuals in a machine, the way that I like to encourage people to think is, leaders are people who help other people, right? So help more people to help more people. So whatever position you're at, if you're working to lift others up and help others out, that starts to produce a culture where that ability to have more purpose, more mastery, more meaning, um, can all come to fruition. And whatever position you're in of leadership, to be aware, so someone's keeping their eyes out on the demands, the controls, and they're doing what they can to support their people. Pat on the back, you're valuable, you did a great job, that was a terrible night, like that customer was impossible to please, that happens sometimes, it's not your fault. You did great with them anyway, right? um, to have that recognition and someone like just paying attention, and you know I've waited tables. There's some people you can't please, like there's no pleasing them. And
Yeah,
to
it's
have
true.
someone afterwards come by, a manager, and say, hey, you did a good job, it was not your fault, that feels good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's a really great point, and that like I said, I've worked in those places as well, and you sometimes can be working like very hard, and like you said, there's people that you can't please, and it can affect your self esteem if you take it personally, and and if you haven't got that kind of positive kind of role model, or that kind of like
Yeah.
manager or boss that says great
Yeah.
job, or if they don't say that, or I've had it where I've worked in places, and it's like you're like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And then if they then do say, or someone else says, oh, you did well there, or good job, it does make that difference. You're more likely to want to go back to work, and to do well, haven't you, as well? And would you say? kind of what we're talking about, and mental health and this well-being and burnout in the workplace, do you think that because of COVID, that it's highlighted more? Would you say?
I think the current circumstances have been a rude awakening for a lot of us. We've sort of lived in a bubble, where the last 20, 30 years, as a society, we forget um, where we came from. Like, it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have clean water, and more people died from drinking water than from so we take so much for granted. And the fact that we're being inconvenienced with, a virus, a pandemic, it's almost shocking to us, given what we have known. But a student of history says, it wasn't that long ago that people didn't have clean water. You were taking your life in your hands, depending on what you were drinking. And it has been difficult. So we need two parts to process, I think. One is, acknowledging the brutal reality, right? It's hard when you get locked down and you're worried about paying the rent and feeding your kids. Like that's
Mm,
hard. That sucks. That's
mm,
terrible.
mm,
So we validate the brutal reality, and then we work on mindset and working on ourselves, and getting through it. And you can't flip the order, otherwise you crack.
mm.
It's like, if you're trying to be positive and you're not validating this is hard, that makes it that much easier to crack under the pressure.
Yeah, no, that's it. I was talking to somebody, and they said that people, like, in this situation, they need to kind of be honest. Be honest with themselves, because to kind of see what's happening in the situation, that everyone's probably feeling a bit of anxiety and stress in some area during this. And like I said, to change, they kind of people need to look at it and kind of see what's going on, because it's like you said, if you're not accepting or identifying those stresses, and that's just going to like make it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And would you say as well, um like, for people to change, for people who are experiencing burnout, is there like a time frame on how long it takes for someone to kind of get back on their feet? Like, how long is that process?
I think it's going to be different for everybody, and
Yeah.
it depends on the continuum where someone finds themselves. One of the important things to recognize is that burnout can become depression, and depression requires getting help,
Mm,
because there's with depression there's an impact on your ability to function. With burnout, it hasn't quite gotten to that point. But the first steps really are about recognizing that you're not yourself, right?
mm,
Your energy is down, you're becoming cynical, you're not feeling effective at work. uh, and then to make a decision that something has to change, and figure out what you're going to be
mm,
changing within what's in your power to change.
mm. Would you say, like, kind of burnout can happen not just in work, but like relationships? Would you say burnout's in more than one place?
No, I mean, that's a brilliant point. So they're looking at burnout with COVID. They look at burnout with parenting, and
Yeah.
in caregivers of a parent who's old and maybe has health problems or dementia, and you become the primary caregiver. So burnout can certainly occur in all walks of life. It's not just related to work.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's something that I won't go too much into it. I think that's something that I was mindful of during the pandemic. I think relationships with certain people,
Yeah.
you kind of you would just realize that I broke up with my the girl that I was with, and there was just this, yeah, everyone's different, but there was this kind of feeling of burnout almost, and this kind of like, and I identified that, and you have to look after yourself, don't you? Really, at the end of the day. But like I don't know if you've looked much into this, or I've only just seen a little bit in the media. Is like, you know, video game companies, and when they're trying to get a video game out,
Uh-huh.
um, is that they'll be doing overtime, and then these workers are doing like crazy hours. And
Yeah.
in some game companies, they're sleeping over in the office and then waking up the next day in the office to get the
Yep.
game finished. And
Yep. Yep.
there was that Cyberpunk recently which came out, and the workers have got to go back to work and to patch it and finish this game over Christmas because it wasn't complete. So do you think there's certain kind of like industries where like burnout is pretty um, kind of more frequent, if that makes sense, like compared to some other jobs?
No, absolutely. So in industries where um, the work demands are so high and the expectations become that you just work till the work is done, um,
Mm,
and your inbox is always full, and there's you can work almost 24/7. So in startups and coding and gaming and computer systems, and I'm sure there's many other jobs where that's the
mm,
case. That leads to a tremendous amount of suffering.
mm,
We look at, so we have our little bubbles here of how we think in our lives. But if you look at places like, China and other third world countries, um, they probably have to work like tremendous hours just to get enough to eat. Um,
mm.
and under conditions that are not up to any of our standards.
Yeah.
So um, it's a problem that we humans are facing kind of in many areas and
Mm.
many places.
Which is that's like culturally as well, like in cultures like you said in China and places like that in Japan. Is that is it because
Yeah.
there's that quote, sorry, is it called karoshi? I don't know, is it karoshi? It's like a proverb which means like work till death or something like that. It's
Wow. Yeah. I didn't know that.
I think that's what it is. I can Google
Yeah, so whether that's the culture, or whether that's the mandate from the companies that have a lot of power, or whether it's the government, and then in other industries, it's the culture, like in the industry that you work hard, um, and if you want to keep your status, if you want to keep rising up above, that's what the expectation is. And there's certainly a fair amount of that in medicine. There was a lot of that
that.
with physicians.
Yeah. And would you say like kind of like stocks, like people in stock in the stock exchange and that kind of job? I mean, that's pretty high intense as well, isn't it? You know, these
It
kind of
it it's
crazy.
probably there's probably lots and lots of places where that high demand and low control, right? You have to work hard just to survive, or to maintain your place, or to climb above.
Mm,
That breeds it for sure.
mm. Yeah, no, exactly. And I just searched that
Yeah.
term I just said. It's called karoshi, Karoshi, which can be translated literally as overwork death. Is a Japanese term relating to occupational sudden mortality.
Yeah. Yeah. Working ourselves to death.
It's pretty scary, isn't it? And I think sometimes people probably aren't aware of that almost. They just kind of, going, 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 going.
It's hard. You don't know what you don't know. So if this is, like what everybody around you is doing,
Mm.
we're used to, learning our cultural norms by observing what everybody is doing.
Yeah,
If that's what's expected, then that's what you got to do.
yeah, no, exactly. And I just I had a thought a second ago, which I was going to ask. Like, do you think it's kind of like wired in us as people because we're kind of born to to keep to work and survive and this kind of thing? Do you think a lot of it kind of comes down to like our wiring almost, or probably parents or genetically? Do you think like if we I don't know if there's
No, it's a good question, and it's interesting. So if we like look at the world as it is today, and like I said, we don't really think too much about how the world was 100 years ago or 500 years ago. But what I like to think about is kind of the time frame of human evolution. So the
Mm,
human as a species, and as this part of a group of species, it's about 2 million years old. And about 70,000 years ago is when Homo sapiens had what they call the cognitive revolution, where we don't know what happened, but we started to work together and to have tribes, and we started to spread across the world, and we just kind of took over. And we did that as hunters and gatherers for 58,000 years, for a long,
mm,
long time. And then about 12,000 years ago, there was more of the agricultural revolution, where we started to like form communities and cultures where we were like more stationary.
mm,
Um, and what the evidence seems to show is that that transition made it so that we could have more people. It was easier to feed more people, but we had to work harder. There was more hours spent in feeding and taking care of the community. So we all started to work harder, but we had more stuff, right? We
mhm,
we were able to do things that we weren't able to do as hunters and gatherers. And then it's only in the last 500 years, right, that we've had a scientific and industrial revolution. And if you look at how we're living today, the sorts of work that we do today, like 100 years ago, no one sat in a cubicle and coded games like for 12 hours a day. No one did that. No one worked in a factory 100 years ago, right? Till their fingers dropped, like making iPhones,
yeah.
or shoes, or clothes, or whatever it is that they're making. It's been a very, very rapid transformation that has happened.
Mm,
Um, and we're not evolved for that. We are evolved for figuring out how to stay alive, and we are evolved for looking to see what people around us are doing, right? so
mm,
so hunters and gatherers, we had to pay attention to what our neighbors did and what they thought, so that we could fit in with the tribe. That's how we learned as
mm,
as young children, was seeing what everybody else was doing. And we were very good at picking that up. And now that's what we look around. What are we supposed to be doing? We look around and we just jump into it.
yeah.
Many
It's
times
pretty.
people don't have a choice too, right? Depending on where they are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point as well. And I think, like you said, it's pretty amazing when you think about that, how we've
Yeah.
gone from X, Y, Z to now, and it's not even
Yeah.
that long ago.
Yeah.
That kind of peak or shift.
Yeah.
And I think, especially with technology as well, that's just added like another layer onto it. And then
Yeah.
you got social media, and then the news, and what other people are doing as well. Because, like you said, it's that kind of look at the drawer, isn't it? Where you're situated, where you live, where you're born. There's all these different things to it, isn't there? That kind of adds,
Yeah.
our quality of life, how we feel,
Yeah.
um, compared to someone who might live somewhere where it's a lot going on around them. There's
Yeah.
going to be different stresses as well, isn't there?
Yeah. And happiness is not correlated to how hard we work, or how
Mm.
much stuff we have at all. Not even close.
And would you say like happiness, is like you said, in that is one of those kind of quality. If someone's happy in what they're doing, they're not going to experience that burnout, if that makes sense. They're not going to as much if if they're happy doing what they're doing.
So I would agree. So if you're happy and inspired, it's hard to be burnt out.
Mm.
Um, and happiness is a curious thing to think about. So how to define it is very hard.
Yeah.
Uh, Tony Robbins, he says happiness is making progress towards goals. There's
Mm.
a psychologist from Harvard, Sean Aker, who studies happiness. His definition of happiness, he says, comes from the ancient Greeks. It's the feeling of joy that you get as you strive to fulfill your potential.
Mm.
And for me, happiness has two components to it. One is uh, we're never finished products, right? Once we stagnate, if we stop growing and learning, that's not happiness. So we're not finished products. Keep growing, keep learning. Um, And the second pillar is to figure out how you're going to blaze your own trail. Who do you want to become? What do you want to be doing? And to figure that out independently according to what you want.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that they're really good points as well. And like, I think like happiness, as you said, it's quite complicated because people, what makes someone else happy is completely different to what makes the other person happy, isn't it? But people ultimately, like you said, are going to not experience that burnout, if they're in a good place, in their emotional state. Um, and like if you're happy, you're going to feel different, like sense of belonging. You're not going to experience those stresses. But I think, like you said, people say to me, there's always going to be, like you said, there's always going to be that stress. Stress is normal in some times, isn't it? There's that healthy stress, and then there's that like other unhealthy stress.
Right. Right. Yeah. And happiness. So after we finish our interview, I'm going to go work out.
Yeah.
And it's a hard workout today. I'm not looking forward to it. It's going to hurt. I'm going to breathe hard. My muscles are going
Yeah.
to get tired.
Yeah.
So I'm not happy thinking about it, but I'm very happy because I know when I finish, I'm going to feel great. I'm going to be so happy that I did it. And I know that if I'm working out regularly, my mind is so much more accommodating to the things that are going on around me. I'm a lot less miserable to be around. So it's good, right? It's good
Yeah.
in the long run. In the short run, it's going to hurt. I'm not looking forward
Yeah.
to it, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. No, that's it. And I think like as well, like, if you exercise, you feel better and you feel more grounded. And,
Yeah,
once you do it, you feel great. But I think like when we start thinking about things, it's like, so, so
that's
easy
right.
to then think that. But,
And and it's true for so many things, right? As we strive to fulfill our potential,
mm,
we have to make those decisions, the delayed gratification. So if you decide that you're going to spend time, over the weekend studying,
mm,
like your material for exams that are coming up, you could be doing lots of other things that would be more fun, more happy, talking to people, cooking,
mm,
eating, going out. Um, but you were going to delay that gratification because in the long run, you know that it's going to contribute more to your happiness in the long run if you
mm,
if you do your push-ups today, if you do your studying today.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely important, as you said. And I think that's something that I've been learning a lot as well. Especially with podcasting because it takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
It's Saturday here, and like a lot of people at the weekend they just kind of do play games or whatever or drink. Um, but you know, networking with people, doing publishing episodes and chasing emails and like sometimes that can be tedious, those kind of back end things. But like I said, in the long term, in the delayed term, it's going to benefit. It's trying to, like I said, look at it in
right.
that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I just sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, do you have any like role models, like or mentors, like now or growing up at all?
The one of the people that I really look up to these days, who I really admire what they've done with their lives and their company, is Dan Sullivan, who's the founder of Strategic Coach. It's a coaching company for entrepreneurs. Um, and he's been coaching for 40 years. He's in his 70s and still going super strong. And I really, really admire him. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Just shows, doesn't it? Someone's passionate about what they're doing, and that they're just striving.
You're just learning. He says, I'm just getting good at what I do. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And do you have any favorite books at all, or
I'll give you a couple.
it can be hard
There's a book.
sometimes?
Yeah, there's a book by Cal Newport called "So Good They Can't Ignore You." Cal Newport is a computer scientist, but he's also an entrepreneur, and he's written a bunch of books. Most recently, they've been about focusing and deep concentration on things as a superpower. But an earlier book was "So Good They Can't Ignore You," and it talks about how to think about your career, how to set up a career, um, in a way that you're going to love your life. And it was
Mm.
so good. Great stories. And at the end of each chapter, there are cliff notes so that you don't even have to read the whole book. You can just like take the nuggets out, very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, there was a business book that I just absolutely loved. Uh, the book is called Creativity Inc. And it's about Pixar. And Ed Catmull, who was the founder of Pixar, and as a young man, he had a dream, he had an aspiration that he wanted to be someone who started doing animation on the computer for like cartoons. Nobody was doing anything like that. And it took like over 25 years for the coding and the computers to get powerful enough to do that. And he had to evolve from being a coder to being the manager of the talent of the coders to being the manager of a company that came up with stories and animators and the directors, and just a remarkable transformation that he had over the course of his life. And one lesson that he talks about was that he goes into situations and into days saying, what am I missing? I'm always missing things. And it's important to always be looking, I don't have all the answers. I need to find out, what are the pieces that are important for me to know that I'm missing.
Mm. That's really powerful, isn't it, when you think about it? And like you can see, like how far they've grown as well as a company,
Yeah.
and like where
Yeah.
they're at. Like everyone knows who they are. I don't know anyone who, if you say, "Oh, what's your favorite Disney film?" Or it's always like, oh, Toy Story, or
Yeah. Toy
it's
Story was the first story that they made that was animated. That was his dream, 25 years to get there, right?
wow, that's amazing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
he knew, like back then that he would end up in that place of doing it.
Like he never knew that it was going to take 25 years, right? So,
Yeah.
and he probably also didn't dream over the possibilities that they could create, and the
Mm,
collaborations and the networking, right? So it's not just the people doing the coding, but the directors
mm,
and the storytellers and the voice actors and
mm.
the people kind of coming together to tell a great story. It's like, remarkable, all the pieces that went into that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly, and it's like they're very like that's quite magical, isn't it? When you think about it, they are quite magical films when you watch them. There's something about them. There's something
Yeah.
that resonates through it, and it just shines through. Like you think they're the people's love and qualities that go into making it. It's highlighted, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And as well, like just to like round up, like what would you say like kind of successes for you, or like happiness?
So happiness, like I said, learning and growing and blazing my own trail. So moving from psychiatry and doing coaching is success for me. Like, um, and the biggest piece for me, like if you look back over the course over my life, has been really that line in the sand, the moment of truth, a commitment, like a true commitment that no matter what, I've got
Mm,
it pretty good, and I'm gonna enjoy the ride no matter what.
mm, yeah, no, that's really really great, and I think it's great what you're doing, and it's been a pleasure like talking to you, and hearing your story, and talking about burnout and these important topics that I think need to be looked at, and yeah, and I hope people take a lot of value from this, because I think there is a lot of value from what you've been saying and the things we've been talking about, and
But yeah, my pleasure, Adam. I'm so happy that you invited me to be a guest on your show, and you're doing great things. I appreciate it.
no, no, thank you. It really, really means a lot. It really means a lot, and I'm really humbled. And I wish you continued success in what you're doing as well. And where can people find you on social media or your website?
Yeah, so my website is Manuel, Manuel, astruc, astruc.com. And if you put a /free, there's a video that my son put together from my morning musings. So on Facebook, every morning I do a Manuel Astruc coaching. I do a morning musings, 2 or 3 minutes on success, happiness, leadership. And my son looked at over 200 of these, and he pulled them together and did a little video for you guys that you can find. Uh,
Wow,
so manuelastruc.com /free.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll definitely put all your details, in the link for the people to find you as well.
Thanks.
But
Appreciate it.
no, you're welcome. But I wish you all the best when you're doing it, and I hope you have a great day today.
Thank you so much. You too. You too.
No, thank you, Manuel. Thank you.
All right.